It is 1:02. Good afternoon from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Jackson Williams. NFL owners meetings are continuing in West Palm Beach, Florida, and the NFL has announced some rule changes for the 2025 season. Both teams will now get a possession of the football in an overtime period during the regular season, and the spot of a touchback on kickoffs has been moved from the 30 to the 35-yard line. The discussion regarding a ban of the tush-push play popularized by the Philadelphia Eagles has been tabled by the owners for a later date. In other NFL news, the Cardinals and defensive lineman Calais Campbell have agreed to terms on a one-year deal. The 38-year-old was a second-round pick by the Cards in 2008 and played there through 2016. The six-time Pro Bowler and Walter Payton Man of the Year award winner has amassed 110.5 sacks in his career. In soccer news, 104.5 The Zone broadcaster and star men's league forward Lucas Panzica will be out indefinitely with an ankle injury suffered in last night's match. Here's men's league head coach Ross Johnston with an update.
Yeah, look, unfortunate what happened to Lucas, but he hardly even played. He got on the field for like 3 minutes last night and this happened, so kind of exhibit A of why he doesn't see the field much, but I guess we're hoping he gets better. Who knows? His ankle's the size of a soccer ball right now, and it's not looking good.
For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, you need to visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 105 The Zone, powered by All Four Seasons Garage Doors, 615-737-1045. If you want to get in on the conversation, as you heard in the latest sports update, Lucas Panzica out indefinitely with a swollen ankle. And, of course, he's walking around in crutches and all this kind of stuff. Socks with sandals and everything. He must have ugly feet. So I ask you, Blaine, how old is it? How old is too old? Is it time for him to hang it up? Because he's younger than me, but I mean, I'm not going out there to play.
He's under 30, right?
I think he may be. Is he under 30?
He's 29, turns 30 in October.
It's the sign. The first sign. Body's already breaking down.
It's starting to get borderline. Well, no, okay. I'll give him 35. I'm retired at going on 34. So I give the you could still play for a while if you stay in shape and you're very active with doing that sport. But if you're not doing it, he said he does it every Tuesday. I said, I've never heard you talk about it on Tuesday, or you ever talking about you scored a goal or what you done. He said,
he must not be very good.
So I don't know if he was doing it just randomly this year. And it was
his coach said that this is why he didn't play a lot of minutes, because he's injury prone. I mean, now does he get the injury prone label now? Is he the Marcus Mariota of?
I think he may be a cap casualty.
Yeah, he's gonna get cut,
and then he may not get picked up. League minimum, which then goes to $20.
This serves Lucas right, because remember on Buck's show when they were all making fun of me for saying that I would be the most likely to run with my arms out.
Oh,
remember that?
No, but
Lucas didn't defend me.
Oh,
he kept quiet, and this is what he deserved.
Well, because he kept quiet. He kept quiet.
He could have came to my defense and solved this whole problem.
Oh man.
Well, speaking of injured players that are on the mend, L'Jarius Sneed has been getting some good updates here from the people down at from both Mike Bergonzi and Brian Callahan down at the ownership meeting. When asked about L'Jarius Sneed and how his progress is coming, it was a weird wording. It was definitely should be ready by training camp. So Mike Bergonzi's also expecting him ready by training camp, but they're expecting him again to still play the huge role and be the quarterback.
Can you actually say that? I don't mean to cut you off, but it definitely should be. That is two different answers.
It's funny because the media that's down there, they were all arguing over the semantics because a lot of them said should. Buck said definitely. And so they started arguing, and it was actually definitely should.
Uh-oh. They better watch out. This crew, GMs and everybody included there, are trying to confuse the media and putting them against each other.
Yeah. I like
Lord
it.
of the Flies situation
move.
here.
Yeah, Lord of the Flies situation. Like Yellow Jackets.
Yeah. Oh, yellow.
Yeah. I mean, this is, to me, I look at it and I go, I mean, I figured he would be ready because they kept him from IR for the longest time. You know, he was eating up a roster spot, so it must not have been as bad as what they initially thought. But it goes to the point that that's a player that we haven't really talked a lot about this offseason. We've mentioned him as a guy that's going to be a piece next year because obviously he's under contract. But at the end of the day, when, let's say that he does not start training camp ready to rock and roll, or what point are you concerned? Because he was never a big training camp guy anyway. So at what point are you concerned? Are you just like kind of in wait and see mode, no need to freak out, or is your concern level already raised?
Let's first start with what you just said. He is not a training camp guy.
Yeah.
That is not a true statement. His body won't let him be. See, when you say that in the sports world, the player goes that he always is taking off during training camp.
No,
so that,
what I mean is that
I got you.
Because of his knee, he hasn't been doing it. So I should clarify. I agree.
Because I don't know what his extent of his injury was, what he was like before.
Yeah.
I wasn't at Kansas City Chiefs training camp before those years.
I think he only. I think I had tallied it up, and the reports were that he was only there for 10 days for the training camp portion. For the Chiefs.
Chiefs, okay.
The Titans, I should go back and do that and check that.
Yeah, he was out there, for a period of time for at least once a week, for all day.
Yeah.
I don't know how long that lasted. I can't recall. But, let's start from the beginning. It was a huge risk for the trade at the time is what I said. Anytime you're dealing with a knee, with a cornerback who plays man-to-man, that's a huge risk. So I wasn't for it. I like him as a player. I think he has the moxie, the air of confidence about him, and he can play man-to-man skills, and he backs it up. All you got to do is go watch him versus Tyreek Hill. That tells everybody everything you need to know. One of the better receivers in the National Football League. So once they made the trade, obviously Bergonzi was part of that equation, I would assume, back then, even though he was on the other side with the Chiefs. So he would know him a lot better than anybody with the Titans organization because he saw him there for 4 years with the Chiefs. So hopefully he can be healthy. To the extent of where he's at right now, that's what I would want to be hearing first and foremost instead of talking about what is he going to do for training camp. Let's start from the beginning. Where is he at with his health? How healthy is he? And then they say, well, he should be ready for training camp. Well, let's get an update. Where is he at on his health? So I want that first before I want to talk about when will he start practicing, because then that sets up the expectations for what will happen in training camp. And we all know that's a fluid deal anyway. It could change as they go along. So I don't even know what we never even got clear, at least for me, what his actual injury was. It was a quad, and then then after that, I kind of got
bruise,
lost.
And then I
got lost.
Yeah.
So I don't know, did he have surgery?
Yeah, I think that he ended up having surgery, if I'm not mistaken.
And what was the surgery for?
Well, that's what we kind of don't know. I don't even think we got that information.
Right, I don't. So that's why I'm saying we need to get a timeline being in from the media perspective. Then let's talk about what may happen when he gets to training camp. We need to know, is he running? What was his injury? What did he have surgery actually on?
Jackson's going to try to effort finding what that actually was.
Was it experimental?
Yeah, he had a bone marrow injection.
That's what
procedure.
it was.
That's all he had was an injection?
Yeah, a bone marrow injection.
He had surgery.
That's what it was.
This comes from him. It was a procedure. It was a surgery 6 weeks ago to repair his strange persistent quad injury. Said he had a bone marrow injection procedure and has been wearing the brace since. This was during the season.
Yeah, so we got any doctors who know anything about bone marrow?
Well, I remembered I Google searched this that day that came down, and it's a medical procedure that involves injecting brain marrow derived cells into the knee joint to treat conditions as osteoarthritis.
Yeah, so that when I hear that, I hear chronic.
Yeah,
that's
which we knew. Everybody knew going in that this was going to be a chronic knee issue.
So when you hear chronic, in my mind, you don't know. It could be week to week. I mean, you just don't know. I mean, you can wake up literally, be fine, and then today is not that day. And that is a scary proposition when you've given a guy that kind of money. So I love him as a player, though, when he's healthy. Man, he was fantabulous. He has length. I've watched him since he was at Louisiana Tech. And he played every position there: safety, corner, nickel. I watched his whole career. It's funny because I had a friend of mine's kid was on that team. So I watched every year. So just so happened I watched him. And they had another cornerback. He was with the Raiders. He was the guy I was locking up. He's with the Detroit Lions now. His name is Roberson. He plays corner, small guy.
Oh, yeah.
Guy. He was locking up big-time receiver in the playoffs, and he was pretty good, too. So I just, man, until we get there and we get to see him practicing on a day-to-day basis, hey, man, I would assume that they have a B plan until he can prove that he can stay healthy. And I'm sure they're thinking that, too, and they're hoping that he's on the right track. But, man, that's so unpredictable.
So you're not going to live and die by the should definitely medical evaluation by Brian Callahan?
I don't know about that one, man. And then here's the one thing, and I've been through rehab, not as much for a knee, but for a shoulder. You are way behind on your off-season program.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So with a knee is even worse for a corner because now – how much speed training is he doing? How much power training is he doing with his lower body? He's a sprinter out there playing a lot of press man-to-man.
Right.
So now you're way behind on your process of what you do in the offseason. So take that into account. And guess what? That can make you half step slower.
That's
just
true.
on surgery alone and not being able to run hills and all these different things you guys do. At least I did anyway. And I'm sure they have much more advanced stuff now. So that's the part that it makes me a little bit nervous that can he perform like he did in the past based off of he didn't even have time to really go through a great training off season because he was rehabbing.
Right.
So, it just makes me nervous. I mean, really about what he's going to look like because I hate it when an elite player like that, he's mentally tough, so he's going to believe he can do it and that he can. And he may be able to do it for a game or two, but then eventually not having the offseason workout is going to show. It's going to show.
As for a guy that's been relatively healthy to have this happen to you,
yes,
this is not a good. You're going to be the exception to the rule if you remain healthy for the rest of the time of your contract.
And I think he's a guy that can battle through it and fight because he's a fighter. Just the way he plays, those kind of people and what they do. And so I sure hope if he can stay healthy, he will be dominant. I mean, if he can get back to where he was.
Well, on Friday on our show, I tracked the Amy Adams Strunk private jet, and it showed up at Fort Lauderdale's airport, which is the Miami airport you typically fly into for executives. And this morning, and I alluded to that, I said, I think Amy Adams Strunk is going to be there. We don't have any confirmation, but I think Amy Adams Strunk was at the private workout for Cam Ward. And this morning, Easton Freeze of A to Z Sports, who will be joining us next, writes, Titans owner Amy Adams Strunk's sneaky meeting with Miami quarterback Cam Ward solidifies the number one pick in the 2025 NFL draft. We'll be talking to him about that and all things Tennessee Titans. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone. Okay, no more of this song. That's gonna put people to sleep. That's songs you find on YouTube to relax. Like, what is this crap?
I like the beat.
Of course, it's a Buck. It's on the Buck playlist. That explains a lot. Speaking of Buck Rising, who works at A to Z Sports, we also have Easton Freeze, who works at A to Z Sports. And Easton, I just want to start off real quick. I made a $500 bet during my spot with Lucas in the Buck Rising show in the last hour with a listener named JR. And he was in the F&M Bank chat on Zone TV, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook Live. And a $500 bet that the Titans are drafting Cam Ward at 101. And if I win, he has to donate $500 to the Alzheimer's Foundation. Is the Alzheimer's Foundation going to be $500 richer?
Well, so what happens if you're right? You just get $500?
No, they give me if I'm right, $500 to the Alzheimer's Foundation.
But if you're wrong.
If I'm wrong, it goes to a charity of his choice.
Oh,
I see. That's funny because on the A to Z morning show this morning, you upped the ante because Austin Stanley made a bet with one of our people in the chat for $100 for another charity. So charities are doing well today. I think the Alzheimer's Foundation is. Let's see. So if you're right, the Alzheimer's Foundation gets money.
Yes.
Okay, then they're about to get $500 richer here in about 3 weeks.
There you go. You wrote an article, Titans owner Amy Adams-Strunk, sneaky meeting with Miami quarterback Cam Ward solidifies the number one pick in the 2025 NFL draft. Now, if you listen to our show on Friday, you would say that she was not so sneaky because I tracked her plane and it was down there at Fort Lauderdale. And as I told the people, we didn't know that she was actually on it or not. But we did track the plane. So I just want to know.
Let me ask you, what led you to look that up in the first place?
Oh, just a gut feeling. Just a gut feeling.
A gut feeling?
Yeah. Amy Adams-Strunk met with Cam Ward, and you're saying that's a wrap, folks. So why is Amy Adams-Strunk's meeting with Cam Ward so important?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think just in general, owners don't make, I think, a habit of meeting with draft prospects before the draft unless they are planning on potentially or definitely taking them. And for this owner in particular, like Jerry Jones, obviously, is the exception. And there are some owners who are more hands-on than others. Amy Adams-Strunk, especially recently, is very hands-off. And this is kind of like, the first thing that we've heard of her doing in terms of emerging from her hibernation. Like, she was at the owners' meetings, but no one ever laid eyes on her. For us to hear that she went down and took everybody in the private jet on Friday after they had all been there on Monday to meet with Cam Ward, and to hear it went really well and she was enamored with him like the Titans staff has become enamored with him. I think that is about as telling as it gets as we piece together these clues that point towards Cam Ward 1.
Kind of take us through the timeline and what you have heard about from the Tennessee Titans in terms of how they've kind of taken this approach to come to this conclusion that it's Cam Ward or the improbable historic call draft trade back.
Yeah, as I wrote in the piece that I published at A to Z Sports this morning, I think the timeline is something along the lines of after the combine, and this is along the lines of what I on my show and you on your show have kind of talked about as we've gone along. After the combine, it was a leaning towards Cam Ward. And they had him in the building less than a week later, that Friday after the combine, for his 30 visit, the first 30 visit on his calendar. After that, it kind of became an expectation. Then they had free agency where they made a lot of moves that kind of telegraphed the pick, I think. And after that, it felt like a lock to me. And I think everything since then, his pro day, private workout, the owners' meetings, have all done well to mitigate any remaining concerns on that front. So I think that's kind of the timeline. And they continue, the Titans brass. They've started to sort of wink and nod about the pick. They suddenly have gone from we're open for business at 1 and we're still going through the process to at the very end of the owners' meetings, they're talking about how, we'll probably have we'll have it figured out in 2 weeks from now. And, also there's no price you can put on a franchise quarterback, you don't trade that. There's no price for that. So, I mean, that's getting pretty close to alluding to it, in my opinion. And I think that the reason why they've been so hesitant and remain so hesitant to just say it is because when they went into this offseason process, it's a very clear 3-step plan where they go through the film 3 separate times. They set their board in a very meticulous way. They want to get through every touch point, whether that's combine formals all the way through to the Zoom meetings and the 30 visits they're finishing up the next 2 weeks. They want to do all of that before they make any decision. And they kind of promised themselves at the beginning, hey, to a fault, we're going to finish this before we decide anything. Even if halfway through or 3/4 of the way through, the plan seems pretty clear. We may all kind of operate with that in mind on a personal level, but we're not going to come to an organizational decision until we're done, no matter what. And that's what they're doing, and I think that's commendable.
In your article titled "The Plan is Cam, Titans Process Can Only Lead to Cam Ward being the number one pick in the 2025 NFL Draft despite media misdirection," You allude to the very end, talking about the role the NFL media machine may have in this decision. Come on, you don't really believe that they need to keep this thing a secret because it helps ratings for the NFL draft? Come on.
Well, I don't think that they need to. I just think that that's the way that these people think. And I mean, listen, maybe this is cynical of me. I think the Titans are the type of organization who are, it's a smaller market. I think it's less of a blue blood program, maybe is one way to put it. They're not a group that is going to want to go away from what the NFL wants. And the NFL doesn't want anything spoiled for their big television program that they're spending $1 billion on. And every year you see the media machine try in some way to inject intrigue, even in years like last year when it was obvious that Caleb was probably going to be the pick from the beginning. And as we went through the process, it became super obvious. The talking point shifted to, well, is Caleb really the right pick? And, you've got Jaden Daniels and Drake May right behind him. Are there some sneaky J.J. McCarthy? Are we overlooking J.J. McCarthy, right? The national media found a way to perpetuate a conversation around that first pick regardless. This year it's been kind of difficult because there's no other quarterback that the national media is really willing to entertain there. We tried the Shedeur thing, for better or for worse. That's just not the way that the NFL sees it, and everybody understands that. And for the Titans, they're not a team that reasonably can pass up the opportunity to take a quarterback if they think that quarterback is the guy. Right? They can't really be super picky in that way. At least that's the way I think that national NFL fans see it. And so we reached a point here where we're having a hard turn, and people are just understanding. Okay, it's Cam, and we'll talk about the rest of the draft starting at 2 or 3 for the next 3 weeks.
We're on the phone with Easton Freeze of A to Z Sports, talking all things Tennessee Titans.
Well, Easton, great articles there. When you look at Cam Ward, how do you view him compared to Shedeur Sanders?
Sure. I like them both, to be clear. And I'm somebody that early on in the process, very early, thought that the Titans might be more intrigued by Shedeur Sanders. I'm higher on Shedeur Sanders than the consensus. I went into this process actually thinking, just based off watching random games in the fall and not watching any tape or diving into any of their profiles, that Shedeur was the better quarterback. And when I sat down and really did my due diligence and watched as much of the game tape of both of the guys that I could get my hands on, I came away thinking, I think both of these guys can be good NFL quarterbacks, and they are not super similar in the way that they play, but I still see a path for Shedeur Sanders to be a really good quarterback. The reason why I think the NFL sees Cam Ward as the better prospect is he does offer more in terms of creativity, right? He's one of the more creative passers we've seen come through the draft in recent memory. His pocket presence, his feel for the pocket, his pocket management is something that I don't think you can necessarily teach. He clearly has an innate ability to handle himself. And for a team like the Titans, we know a lot like relationships. Sometimes these teams tend to swing maybe too far in the opposite direction to get away from what has just burned them. And with Will Levis, we know that his pocket feel just really didn't exist. And that was a constant frustration. And I think a guy like Cam, who demonstrates that as a real strength, not just somebody that can navigate the pocket and kind of have eyes on the back of his head, but also is really strong in the pocket. The way that he plays convinces you, I think. But I had some friends going into the combine when we got his measurements for the first time that were convinced he was 2 or 3 inches taller and 10 or 15 pounds heavier than he was, because he plays that way in terms of how difficult he is to bring down in the pocket in the backfield. So he creates in that way. He is fearless when it comes to ripping nasty balls down the middle of the field. He throws a 6-seam ball. He's got above average accuracy to most parts of the field that matter most to the NFL evaluators. He is somebody that is, I think, has a good enough arm and is above average, not great, but above average athlete. So he just checks just about every box. And then the last thing I'll say is, speaking of things the Titans were kind of tilted on finding, we heard in my interview with Brian Callahan back in January that they were dead set on finding a guy that had the nervous system that they were looking for, that it factor in a quarterback. And you have evaluators on this team that are, most recently working with Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes. So they know what that looks like. And I think that that's been a big part of this when they finally sat down with him in Indianapolis and then again a week later back here in Nashville at his 30 visit. They were so impressed with the guy, with the mind, with the guy on the whiteboard and the guy in the film room. They think that he just has that thing, that moxie that you need to not just be a natural leader of men and an inspiration to your teammates, but somebody that can handle the game mentally, something that they were lacking in Will Levis, frankly. And so I think for all of those reasons, that's why they want to draft him at 1.
How much do you think, you talked about a little bit the NFL media machine, how much do you think after they have these pro days for Shedeur Sanders, then the private workouts and everything else, then all of a sudden old big old ESPN's going to be like, who will the Titans take with the first pick, Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward? How much do you think that's going to happen?
Oh, I mean, they'll talk about it. There'll be cameras on the guys that are there for the Titans, and we'll talk all about who is and isn't there, and why is Brian Callahan missing? Why is Chad Brinker missing? What are they up to?
No, they're still going to be saying who's going to be the number 1 pick. They're going to hype up that machine.
Yeah, exactly. And it'll probably happen again when they do I think the private workout is a week from today, if I'm not mistaken. So they'll do it, but at this point, the cat's out of the bag. You can't put this back in the jar, I don't think. So they'll say it, but no one will listen.
So if they take Cam Ward, let's make that assumption. How much will that impact if he plays below average? How much will that impact Brian Callahan and the head coach with his job security?
Oh, deeply. I wrote another article about this over the weekend about the historical precedent for coaches who are coaching a top 3 pick quarterback I think it was the past 10 years that I went back. Mm-hmm. And there's this notion that drafting a rookie quarterback highly buys you some time as a coach, buys you some time as a GM. It couldn't be further from the truth. It is the exact opposite. It accelerates your timeline. And the past couple of years bear that out. There have been 17 quarterbacks taken in the top 3 in the last 10 years. 10 of their coaches did not survive past the rookie year of that quarterback. Some of them fired in that season. Of the 7 that did survive, off the top of my head, I think you had 3 that were also rookie coaches themselves, so they were given an extra year. You had 1 that was Kyle Shanahan. You had you had 4. You had 4 that were rookies themselves. 1 that was Kyle Shanahan. 1 that was somebody else who was deeply ingrained to him, forgetting off the top of my head. And the only comparable situation to Brian Callahan is the situation he was in as an OC before he got the Titans job with Zach Taylor in Cincinnati. It's actually the identical situation. Zach Taylor, when they got Joe Burrow, it was his second year. They picked Joe Burrow first overall, and they had a lackluster season. I mean, they ended up being the 5th overall pick the following year. So a lackluster season that involved the Joe Burrow injury, and Zach Taylor survived that season. Brian Callahan's in kind of that same boat. I remember what it was. 3 of them were rookie coaches themselves. 2 of them had quarterbacks that were just immediately awesome, so you don't get fired for having an awesome quarterback. And then 1 was Kyle Shanahan. The 7th of those 7 guys that did survive was Zach Taylor. And so to put all of those numbers plainly, 10 of the 17 coaches got fired with a rookie quarterback that fit this criteria. And of the ones that didn't get fired, you basically either need to be a rookie coach yourself, which Brian Callahan is not, or you need to get really lucky, I guess, like Zach Taylor did, and thread that needle of having an awesome quarterback or having a quarterback that got hurt, and so that kind of buys you time. It's a narrow path is what I'm trying to say. And Brian Callahan, I mean, he's done it before. He was there for the Zach Taylor situation where this kind of thing happened. But if to your original question, if Cam Ward is not good quickly, there's not a lot of historical precedent for that being a good situation for this coaching staff.
Mm-hmm. Lastly, what were your thoughts, or give us a grade on the Titans free agent signings thus far this offseason?
Oh man, I'd give them a solid B because I think they're sticking to their plan. They told us what they wanted to be coming in, that they wanted to do this differently than they did last year, kind of that sugar rush approach that they had last year. They have been a lot more measured. It's been a lot more boring. I don't think they're necessarily super close to done. They still have a number of additions I think they'll make. The one overpay, the one big ticket item being an offensive tackle that's going to start for you for the foreseeable future, I think is a necessary evil. And so I would say it's been fine. It's not been spectacular. I think it's kind of hard to pinpoint what exactly a spectacular free agency cycle is. You know what I mean? Because just getting the best names available, the Titans showed us last year that's not necessarily an awesome thing. I think it's about value. It's about where you are in your team building cycle. It's about the positions that you need to fill to be here's what an awesome free agency looks like to me. And it's teams like the Ravens do this a lot. Teams that through value contracts, not overspending, but being picky and choosy and getting guys in the building who are useful players. They're either going to start or rotate for you. And setting yourself up to enter the draft where you can essentially just pick the best player available on the board every time you are on the clock. To not be in a situation to need we need a quarterback in the first round. We need an edge in the second round. And like for a team like the Titans, when you have that many holes, it's kind of impossible not to do that. They want to get to a point where they can be like the Ravens or the Packers or the Chiefs, these teams that are the Eagles, the teams that operate this way. Can we go into the draft where we can just take the best player available and not worry about need? That's a great free agency to me. So the Titans haven't done that because I don't think it was possible, but I think they've had a fine time.
Okay, Easton, I got a question for you because you brought up Brian Callahan and saying that he's done it before with Joe Burrow and Zach Taylor and all them. So here's my question to you. He was offensive coordinator at the time. Now, we know that in certain situations, the offensive coordinator isn't really coordinating or anything like that. Maybe he does have more of a hands-on approach, but Brian Callahan's the head coach. So what is your faith in Nick Holtz and Bo Hardigree to get the most out of Cam Ward? Because those are going to be the coaches mainly dealing with Cam Ward on a daily basis.
Yeah, I'm optimistic. I like Nick Holtz a lot. I think that he's somebody that most people don't really understand what it is he does. But when you talk to Nick himself or the people that work with him, when you ask Brian, I asked Brian in my interview with him, who are the unsung heroes of your staff? Who are the guys you couldn't do it without? Nick Holtz was immediately one of his answers, not just because he's one of his highest ranking cadets, but he's crucial to the Titans from Saturday to from Monday to Saturday. He's a big part of their game planning, their operation. I think that he's a sharp guy, and so I think that he knows what it's going to take to get the most out of Cam Ward. And then Bo Hardigree is somebody that I won't claim to know super well personally, but I know every time I talk to anybody that works with him in the Titans staff, and Brian has said this, that I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to be able to keep Bo on my staff. Brian had to block an interview, I think, with the Bears. Is that right? Bo Hardigree was maybe going to interview with the Bears this offseason. He's a desirable candidate to move up the coaching ranks throughout the league. Apparently he's a very sharp guy. I know that the players that interact with him really like the guy. So I don't really have any reason to have a lack of faith in this group to get the most out of the quarterback.
Well, we've been joined by Easton Freeze. You can follow him on Twitter at Easton Freeze. He's an NFL reporter and Titans host and beat writer for A to Z Sports. You can read a couple of articles that he has out this morning. He has 2 articles out this morning surrounding Cam Ward's pro day and private workout and the timeline and what that means for the Tennessee Titans. So, Easton, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, always a pleasure, guys.
Appreciate it.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk more about the Tennessee Titans and Cam Ward because I have a couple of questions for Blaine. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone. Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone, powered by all Four Seasons Garage Doors, 615-737-105. You want to get in on the conversation. Of course, we also have the F&M Bank chat on Zone TV, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook Live. The Zone TV chat where I have to constantly clarify and remind people what my exact words have been because people think I've moved off of Shedeur Sanders for Cam Ward. Shedeur Sanders is my quarterback one. But nobody cares about my quarterback one. I'm not drafted for the Tennessee Titans. Cam Ward is clearly the Titans quarterback one. And speaking of Cam Ward, there was a question kind of popping up with Easton that kind of sparked my final question. So I want to turn that final question over to you. You know, everybody's like, well, Brian Callahan's done this. Brian Callahan's done that. We know that Joe Burrow has given Brian Callahan some of the props for his development. We know that Brian Callahan is involved in the development to the extent of he is the right-hand man of the head coach. So it really falls down to Nick Holtz and Bo Hardegree's role, much like Brian Callahan and Dan Pitcher, the former quarterback coach, now offensive coordinator of the Cincinnati Bengals, for this development of Cam Ward. So in your mind, you know, how much faith do you have in Nick Holtz and Bo Hardegre to really do what is needed of them within whatever Brian Callahan lays out to get the development of Cam Ward on the right track?
That's really hard to say, not knowing those individuals, not even seeing them at their work and their job. And so only we have to go by is what we've seen what the Titans did last year with their quarterbacks. And that's kind of what I leaned into a lot is when Mason Rudolph was out there, I felt like the offense was somewhat similar. Different style because of the quarterbacks are different style type players, but the offense functioned the exact same. And there was no difference to me. I even watched some more Brandon Allen today. And guess what? I saw the same freaking offense. And he's throwing to the dump downs after the number one read wasn't there. He dump it down. So maybe that's why Levis just refused to do it and still wanted to go downfield when the number one read wasn't open. But that's pretty much all they had. So maybe, you get to realize that maybe Will Levis is just going to be a backup quarterback and can show you, glimpses of greatness as a starter, which a lot of backups do. And some have been afforded the opportunity to actually start. Ryan Fitzpatrick comes to mind.
Yeah.
Jameis Winston, all these guys. So good quality players, but, so I don't really know after 1 year. It's really hard to judge really after one season. So that's all I have to go by. And I'm really big on actions, what we see in actual games. And they're not the ones out there executing. So I don't know what they're teaching them and not. So that's unfair really for me to say based off what I've seen. But I am. It's always interesting to me. I'm going to go to college on this. When coaches come in and then they attach themselves to a player that they only coach 1 year. He was already great. How do you say that you were part of this process?
That's true.
So, and then you put it on your resume to elevate yourself. So, the NFL is built on relationships and your agent contacts and where they have relationship and getting an opportunity. So, and I don't like playing those games because there's a lot of guys who are not, afforded that opportunity, and some guys don't deserve it. So we shall see what he is or isn't as a head coach and whoever's coaching quarterbacks, because it's going to be pretty clear cut to me after about 6 games of what Cam Ward could be, because there are signs of him that he does some of the same exact thing, just a little more talented in his launch angles with the ball, because he can throw from all different kind of angles, a la Mahomes. And I'm just talking about his angles. He can throw the football and backpedal and still get the ball there. We'll see if that still continues. And he does the flip deal. He does some things that can irritate coaches and get coaches fired. So I'm interested to see how quickly he'll learn that what he can and can't do based off the NFL, which your guys are bigger, stronger, faster. So that, to me, if he can get that out of him, that's pretty good.
It's funny, if you go watch this draft class, everybody, now Cam Ward's probably passing more than some of these guys are going to name, but Tyler Shuck, there's a clip floating around right now of him doing something worse than Will Levis. And the only guy I can't find a real bad play like that on is Shadur Sanders, like the flip or the trying to do something like that. But he does something different. He bails out of the back of the pocket and costs your team 20 yards on a sack.
Yeah.
So, like, all these quarterbacks have their flaws. It'll be really interesting to see how this particular quarterback class shakes out, not only where they're drafted, but how their careers go. But the Tennessee Titans seem pretty intent that no matter what, Cam Ward is their guy. And we heard from Brian Callahan this morning on the Kevin Clark show, and we're going to play those clips later, but he's talking about how they tried to make it, their goal was to make year 1 of Joe Burrow year 3 of LSU. And he talks about how the transition from college to pros and all this stuff is a lot different than even what it was in 10 years ago. So just a bunch of different stuff. We'll hear a lot of the Callahan philosophy in quarterback growth and quarterback development. But first, let's go to Steve in Nashville who wants to talk about Cam Ward. Steve, you're on with Blaine and Zach.
Hey, guys, the last 3 things you said while I was waiting on hold were spot on. Well, and here's a question for you. And I certainly like Cam Ward's intangibles. Blaine, I'm agreeing with you 100%, man. What do you do on the field? Levis, is he the guy from a few years ago that was the wide receiver that, body like Tarzan, play like Jane? Cam Ward does some things. I know you know who that is. I'm not going to say his name. But the whole thing is Cam Ward puts the ball on the ground a lot. Why are we catering to Callahan when clearly the best player in this draft is Travis Hunter? And I know we cannot take him just because positionally. But I'm a little bit concerned that we're putting all our eggs in this basket when there's a quarterback. Nobody's even talking about Will Howard. Nobody is talking about Will Howard. Now, I don't know why, and he may not be the guy, but it's very disappointing to see all of this going down. It seems like their eggs are in one basket with Cam Ward. And I couldn't agree with you guys more. It's a sad situation we've come to right now with where our roster is depleted so much.
Well, I get what you're saying, Steve, but I also think that it's not because of Callahan. Now, I'm sure Callahan likes Cam Ward and whatever, but the decision makers are driving this process. You're the 4-headed GM monster, Chad Brinker, Mike Bergonzi, Reggie McKenzie, and Dave Ziegler. They're the ones driving this process and driving the decision-making process. But, like, to me, I look at Cam and I go, Cam is clearly better than Will Howard. And I get Will Howard does a lot of things that people like and everything, but we're talking about Will Howard. He won the championship game, but he's also was surrounded by one of the best rosters that college football NIL money could buy. And so I think that
so was Joe Burrow.
So was Joe Burrow. I agree. But I think we can also see on the tape that Will Howard is not Joe Burrow. And I'm not saying Cam Ward's Joe Burrow either. But I do agree with what you're saying. But they were also one of the best college teams of all time as well, too.
That's true. Yeah, and it's always hard because I tell you, when you're evaluating players when they come out, the NFL is always looking for the negative side of it. And it's really hard to say it's unfair. Well, he had all this talent around him. He should have succeeded. Well, no. Wait a minute. First of all, he had to get him the ball now. Yeah. And it was on point and got that guy in stride. So, it's really unfair. Joe Burrow, I think, had a mechanism of failing at one place and then you recouping, having the right mindset then the players around him and elevated those players, by the way. I mean, Chase probably would have been good, but I think he elevated Jefferson to a whole nother level. Mm-hmm. So, you got to give me props there. So it's always hard when you got really great players around quarterback because that's not how it's going to be in the NFL. So I actually like Will Howard. As time went on in the season, I gradually started liking his skill set. He can run just enough. He can run, and he's built durable, and he's got somewhat of a big arm. He doesn't make minor mistakes. I think he's a Will Levis without the Will Levis brain.
Yeah,
and that could put you in the second, third round.
You're right.
Mm-hmm.
When we come back, we'll go to the phones. We got Mike in Austin, Texas. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone.
Struggling with joint pain? Suffering from a recent injury? Looking to recover faster from an injury or surgery? Well, at Edge, we've got you covered. From powerful peptide stacks like BPC 157 to TB 500 to PRP treatments, stem cell therapy, and high film muscle stimulation, Edge Peptide is your go-to solution for faster healing and recovery. And as an athlete myself, I know how frustrating pain and injuries can be. That's why now is the perfect time to take control of your wellness and finally address those nagging issues. Whether it's golf, tennis, or any activity you love, don't let pain hold you back any longer. Edge specializes in regenerative treatments designed to reduce inflammation, promote tissue repair, and improve mobility, helping your body heal naturally while avoiding surgery whenever possible. And right now, we're offering a free $250 consultation with your initial treatment. And all you have to do is just go to edgepeptide.com. Yes, that's edgepeptide.com. Or you can just give them a call today at 615-724-1878. That's 724-1878.
It is 2:02. Good afternoon from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Jackson Williams. NFL owners' meetings are underway in West Palm Beach, Florida, and the NFL has announced some rule changes for the 2025 season. Both teams will now get possession of the football in an overtime period during the regular season, and the spot of a touchback on kickoffs has been moved from the 30 to the 35-yard line. The discussion regarding a ban of the tush-push play, popularized by the Philadelphia Eagles, has been tabled by the owners for a later date. In other NFL news, the Cardinals and defensive lineman Calais Campbell have agreed to terms on a one-year deal. The 38-year-old was a second-round pick by the Cardinals in 2008 and played there through 2016. The six-time Pro Bowler and Walter Payton Man of the Year award winner has amassed 110.5 sacks in his career. The Nashville Predators were back on the ice last night as they fell to the Columbus Blue Jackets 8-4. Preds back at it once again as they take on the Stars in Dallas tomorrow night at 7 p.m. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, you need to visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone, powered by all Four Seasons Garage Doors. 615-737-1045 is the number. And Blaine, we've been talking about, obviously, Cam Ward, the potential number one overall pick, even though I got a $500 bet on it that it is, with a listener for charity. But today, Adam Schefter was on the Pat McAfee show, and he said the current feeling is that neither the Browns nor the Giants will select a quarterback at number 2 or number 3 overall. Now, this was in response to talking about what the Patriots do at number 4. So obviously that was saying that Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, some form of fashion, 2 and 3. In that scenario, that is a kind of a signal saying that unless they trade up, they both like Cam Ward and they think the Titans are taking Cam Ward. So in my mind, I look at it and says that trade up is not dead, or trade back for the Tennessee Titans, I guess I should say. Trade up is not dead if you're the Giants or the Browns. Because yesterday, after our show, I was in the cars, listening to some music. I was driving, a lot of traffic. Had a crisis of consciousness.
No, this did not happen.
I had this weird feeling, this weird gut feeling just came over me. I'm listening to some Run the Jewels, having a blast, and just singing in my car. And this feeling came over me, and I just stopped singing, and I'm going, holy crap, the Titans are going to trade back. I don't know why. I just got that weird feeling in me.
What I missed it.
Yeah, I know.
I kept leaving
you left the door open.
I did.
There's no logic to it, right?
No, it is not.
There is no logic to why that came over me. It was just a gut feeling. But I did want to propose something just real quick. It's not the end of the world if they trade back. Not saying they will. Does not sound like they will because logic came back, took hold of me. But it sounds. But I do want to say that we know that yesterday it was. I was trying to look for the tweet, but there was a Giants reporter that said that he spotted out in the open GM Joe from the Giants and Mike Bergonzi, Tennessee Titans
a picture
GM.
out there.
Mike Bergonzi.
But it was.
Look at that. Never ready. I mean, I knew it only day one. After day 2, he'd never be ready. And so GM Joe of the New York Giants and Mike Bergonzi were seen spotted having coffee together yesterday morning. Yeah, so obviously, you just got to keep the door open. They're open for business. Absolutely. But I will say that I did have a little bit of a feeling, a gut feeling came over me.
Is that why it happened? It manifested inside you?
I didn't know that. I knew that early this morning, but it just kind of hit me on the way home.
Oh, because I thought the picture was out there yesterday. Yeah. I saw that and I was just like, it's just really hard to read all these tea leaves of what will actually happen because you just never know, what could happen on the actual day.
Right.
So until that day is over, man, it was like getting drafted. Until the day was over, did I really believe, okay, I'm getting drafted?
Yeah.
Like, until you see it, do you know, especially if you're not a first-round guy.
Right.
So, inevitably, if you're a first-round guy, you could drop, but at least you're going to get drafted. So that's kind of how this process is for me is, there's, you never pass up on a franchise quarterback when you need a franchise quarterback. And then there's, well, if you're in the situation the Titans are in, if there is some team that's going to give you a boatload and you need to rebuild your team with so many holes, then that's thrown out the window. So, and then you can always get a quarterback maybe the next year because you are rebuilding and it's going to be a time frame from a 3-year window here where you are going to be rebuilding. So it'll be interesting to see what take, or will they be forced to take? And my whole question is, if you take Cam Ward at 1, and then who are you now taking at 2 if you are forced to draft at 2? Because there's a big gap there. And then, man, you sure hope if you don't trade the number 1 pick, then you sure hope you can trade the number 2 to at least pick up one more pick, whether it's in the 3rd or 2/4 or whatever it may be. You need more collateral to make more picks to build your roster. So, and this draft is built by the belly, as everybody is saying. So we shall see if the Titans, then pick up being able to draft maybe, let's say, a safety, a wide receiver, or whatever it may be with these middling round picks that guys are going to be contributors pretty much immediately.
So let me ask you this. This just kind of popped in my head while we were talking about, quarterbacks in this draft class and all this kind of stuff. Are there too many draft analysts out there? Because I was just thinking, how the narrative has shifted over these last few months. It was that these quarterbacks, there's no franchise quarterback in this draft class. And we pushed back on that idea on this show. We said, we've seen the film. These guys would be arguably up there with some of the guys in last year's quarterback class. Maybe not all of them. I mean, we're not talking like I would draft Jaden Daniels behind these guys. But at the end of the day, this tape wasn't as bad as what everybody thought it was. And now everybody's come around because listen, I get it. If you're someone that works for ESPN and you're on TV all the time, you probably don't have a lot of time to get to the tape. So your schedule ends up piling up as it goes on, and your opinions may change on prospects as it goes on, as you're being able to get to film. But it makes me wonder, why are you even speaking on it if you haven't watched the film? And it feels like that's where we kind of ran into this issue with Cam Ward, because now people don't understand, like fans are having a hard time reconciling. Well, a couple of months ago, everybody said there wasn't a franchise quarterback in this class. Now everybody's saying that Cam Ward is QB1. Right. And it makes me feel like, I think there's just too many damn draft analysts out there.
Yeah, well, that is for sure. And everybody gets an opportunity to give their opinion. I think draft analyst is a tough job. It's almost impossible for you to get it right, even just if it's the top, 10
It takes
picks.
forever to get through all 22. If you do it right,
yeah.
It takes forever.
So here's what I do when I hear about draft analysts. I don't know if everybody else, I just go, oh, that's interesting. And then then that causes me to act on what they say.
Right.
That means I'm going to go watch. I don't want to just trust what they say. I'm not big on trusting what anybody says about any sports thing, because so many people are tied to other people and listen to gossip and rumors, and agents told me this and that, and coaches, as Deion Sanders did with his son, right? Yeah, see, so athletes aren't built like that. They want to see the facts in the film, because the film never lies.
And some people don't even act like, just because they clip off a film from a highlight reel, they think they know what they're talking about. And people trust, if you have Film Room in your name, or if you're like Tape Watcher 101 or something like that, people automatically assume, because you make YouTube videos, that you know what you're talking about. And I think there was a really good example of this. I meant to share it with you. Todd McShay showed a clip of Matthew Golden, or a highlight reel, and he's talking about the stuff on the film while he's watching it, going over it. And he puts a blurb out talking about there's nobody that really moves like Matthew Golden, in his opinion. That's Matthew Golden's his wide receiver 1 behind Travis Hunter, obviously. And all these relatively known among the draft nerd community people quote tweet it and say, nobody moves like this. Well, Isaiah Bond is at the top of the screen running the same route. Guys, he's not just talking about speed and running the route. He's talking about, because in the clip, if you actually watch it, it's the lack of wasted movement from Matthew Golden. It's how he moves, not just about how fast he moves. And if you listen to the clip instead of just the new age guys piling on the old age guys. If you just listened to the clip, you would have understood that. But that's where we're at in the draft community. It's a very combative community out there for whatever reason.
Well, with social media now, everybody has a voice. So you just got to be careful when you evaluate. And that's why I love looking at the tapes and go, that's interesting. Or, sometimes I learn some things from some of these guys, whether you're an analyst or someone who just likes a certain player. And you're like, so I like to go back and watch and have my own opinion about them, whether I agree or disagree. It doesn't really matter to me. It's just the fact that, bringing awareness about a player and like, ooh, that's a stretch, to think that guy is going to be a first round pick. But obviously there are some people who believe that. So I'm more of a let's see it in action instead of, not seeing it on film and then not matching up with his workout and all. It all has to come together. It can't be film looks like one way and then he goes have a great workout and all of a sudden now he skyrockets up the board.
Yeah.
No, that's not how I'm going to operate. And he's a 4-5 guy when he puts on equipment and field. That guy ran right by him. That guy was at Ball State.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Right.
So, yeah, that I don't care what they say. Oh, he had a bad... No, he's never supposed to have a bad day against a team like that.
Yeah, it's like the people who want to blame Texas A&M's defensive scheme for the reason why Shamar Stewart doesn't have any sacks. Well, this was the first year of that scheme. What about the prior years?
Right.
We're talking about the guy that's averaged a sack a year.
He literally just was missing sacks.
Yeah.
He was.
Yeah.
So it makes you think, well, can he change? Can he bend? I mean, like, this
And
I
get the appeal if you're a coach, right?
Right.
I can fix him.
Yeah. Yeah, because he...
Good luck.
But I tell you one thing, his effort was not in question.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
He had a motor. I was like, whoa. I was like, man, damn, why is he missing all these sacks? So I was baffled, like, how he missed so many sacks.
And we're talking over different systems, too, because everybody's like, that's the new narrative. I'm like, well, what about the prior year where he didn't do anything? Production, let me say this, athleticism and production, getting both of those out of an edge player, you're likely to have a pretty dang good edge player over your years. If one is lacking, you're really setting yourself up for failure. That's a conversation for another episode we'll be having coming up soon because we're going to be going position by position, talking in depth about what makes a prospect, in that position shine, some of the prospects we like and all that. Starting on Monday, we're going to go position by position every day. When we come back, we're going to hear from Brian Callahan on what he loves about Cam Ward, how he wants to develop a young quarterback. We'll also go to Peyton on the phone calls. 615-737-1045 is the number. Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 1045 The Zone. Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 105 The Zone, powered by All Four Seasons Garage Doors, 615-737-1045. And let's go to Peyton, who's on the line. He wants to talk about the draft. Peyton, you're on with Blaine and Zach.
Hey, what's up, guys? How are y'all?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm good. Appreciate you guys taking my call. So I'm trying to cope with all the potential trade back talk. Makes me sick to my stomach. I'm getting just this. I too have had that similar gut feeling over the past couple weeks that we're just going to do what the Tennessee Titans do as of late and make what I consider, a bonehead decision in trading back. I know that there's a lot of talk about the rebuild, but there was 9 or 10 games last year that the Titans were completely in the game, including, games against the Jets and the Vikings and the Bears. And that, I think most people would attribute to bad quarterback and O-line play. I don't, a lot of people have said, we're so much, we need so much more than a quarterback and an offensive line to solve our problems. But when you look back, and I watched every single game, unfortunately, throughout this last year, and there was, at least 8 to 10 games where we were very competitive and right there on the doorstep within a score or two. And I do believe that our quarterback and O-line play is largely responsible, and turnovers were largely responsible for those games that we lost that were close, within a couple of touchdowns. I think it would be a complete bonehead move to trade back when you have shored up the offensive line and then you bring in someone at least that can play competent quarterback play and not turn the ball over, much less a superstar, as what it seems to be Cam Ward. I just don't think we're that far away from being a playoff contending team. I know last year was ugly, but that's just my thoughts. I'll hang up and listen. Thanks, guys.
Hey, no problem. Listen, Peyton, that last part people are going to roll their eyes at. But how many times have we seen teams go from worst to first in their division? Mm-hmm. And the Houston Texans have, on paper, gotten worse. The Tennessee Titans, on paper, have not gotten better. We have to at least be real about that. But this is a very...
What? We signed Tim Boyle.
Tim Boyle and Brandon Allen. We fixed it. We're better.
We did it, Dan Moore Jr. though.
I will say that the offensive line on paper should be the best
guard
in the
Zeitler.
Arguably the best in the division. But I mean, there is a path that if Cam Ward is a franchise quarterback and they're able to unlock the potential, find some other key players in the draft, and let's not forget, free agency still happening. Mm-hmm. Free agent, because Lucas asked me today, what free agent would you want the Tennessee Titans sign right now? I said, Zadarius Smith. Give me an edge rusher. Give me Zadarius Smith. Now,
Elijah Moore
is one of the guys that said Tyler Lockett. But these guys are waiting to see what their market is after the draft. So maybe they lose leverage. Tyler Boyd lost leverage last year by waiting till after the draft. Maybe they'll lose leverage, but maybe they'll gain some. But at the end of the day, there is still a path that if Cam Ward is who everybody thinks he is and the games remain competitive like they were last year in some instances, not all instances, that competent quarterback play should be better. And not to mention, we haven't even talked about this, and I feel that we're being a little disrespectful to special teams, but Justin Hardy got re-signed, and I think that's a great move, under the radar move for this Tennessee Titans team to bring back someone that really helped them on stabilize special teams. So I look at it and I go, I'm not betting money on it, but it is not out of the realm of possibility that this team makes a little bit more noise than what we expect than what we saw last year.
Well, there definitely won't be any pressure. So to the caller's point, though, there were some games. So if they won 6 or 7 games, that wouldn't be surprising, if the guys come together. So, because that's kind of where you thought, based off looking at the games last year and how you lost, that's where you have been. Now, here's the question. I know everybody's talking about franchise quarterback, and there's always a time frame where you must give the new young quarterback, super talented, time to mature in the NFL. Now, when he's maturing through that process, does he still go through, let's say, some growing pains and cost the Titans games? But then you see the progression of him getting better, though.
Yeah.
See, and that's where the Will Levis did not.
Right.
He kind of stayed the same even after he came back from injury. He was just okay. At least he wasn't doing anything, some snafus there, losing the game. He was just static quo. So if he can do that early on and then start playing within the system and then being himself, then we may have something. But until that happens, it's really hard to say if a guy, you just don't know until he starts getting hit and see the speed of the game, how they really are going to act and play at the National Football League level, because it is different and it's nothing like it. So I think he has the mentality.
Yeah.
I
don't think there's any doubt, question about the mentality, the drive that Cam Ward has. Because I've probably everybody can quote for a quarterback. I'm sure everybody can quote what I'm about to say. He's a 0-star recruit that got better every stop along the way.
Right. But does that end? And that's what you can't predict.
Right. You cannot predict it. Does the fat pig is happy or something like that? I mean,
it's really hard to be. I mean, you can go from Alabama to Notre Dame,
happy. That's what I'm
to why does an MTSU guy come in the league and look really good? Mm-hmm. See, we got Kevin Byard, right? We the guy that was drafted last year from there or was undrafted from there. So you just don't know. I wish I could, put a finger on the adjustment of your eyes and handle the speed of the game. Doesn't look like that on TV. You can't feel the hit, except if you're there and watching how you handle that kind of pressure. So hopefully he can. And if he does, I think the Titans need to get him some weapons. Who are they?
They got to get some weapons because they are desperate. They are thirsty for some weapons.
It's more than just him and the line. He also has to have some.
Right. Everybody wants to talk about the offensive line in this. Well, you don't have DeAndre Hopkins, Nick Westbrook-Ikine, and you just have Calvin Ridley. Yeah. I joke about Bryce Oliver.
I know. That was a joke on your team.
Well, I love Bryce Oliver.
I do too.
And I think that again, you're looking to upgrade the Nick Westbrook-Ikine position. It's something that DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley technically did, but as we saw even in Kansas City, DeAndre Hopkins is not the DeAndre Hopkins of old. Mm-hmm. So you got to find that number 2 and number 3 because Tyler Boyd, really old and didn't really do much for this team. So Calvin Ridley, 1,000 yards, that's great. And there's a lot of missed opportunities and missed connections between him and Will Levis. But let me tell you something. It's the offensive line looks good on paper. This pass catching room makes me want to vomit.
So all we got is Ridley and Oliver? Who else do we have?
Oh, you got Van Jefferson, James Proche. I like Van Jefferson's route running, but he's been just a guy. And again, this team
I think he's going to take NWI spot.
Yeah. Well, we're just looking for I'm tired of just a guy. Mm-hmm. We need the playmakers. They need 2 wide receivers still on this team.
So how are they going to get them? Will they wait for some June cuts? Now,
Maybe.
When I say that, because that's after the draft, and then get another high-performing receiver, a solid start in this league.
They may have to double dip in the draft at wide receiver in the 4th or 5th round, and that's asking a lot of a 4th and 5th round player.
That is not.
But that's kind of where they're at.
No, it is where they're at, but you can't then put that on them.
I know.
You cannot.
But that's what's going to be asked of them. Unfortunately.
That's
it's almost going to be like wide receiver by committee is what it feels like.
We're I get if we're talking about Traylon Burks, a first-round guy, but your 4th, 5th-round guy, you should say, hey, he should be a solid contributor, but that's about it.
And like I said, maybe they're hoping that Elijah Moore's price will fall after the draft. But getting back to the quarterback just real quick, because you talked about learning, you wish you could learn about how Cam Ward is wired. Here is a SiriusXM NFL clip where Brian Callahan was on SiriusXM radio at the NFL annual coaches meeting down in West Palm Beach, where Brian Callahan talks about what he's learned about Cam Ward during this pre-draft process.
I think that's what's happened with him over this process is the more people have actually dug into him as a person, as a player, watched the tape, they start to come away with the impression of him that I think what's becoming more consensus is that he's a really, really good player and a really good quarterback, and has some skills that translate. And he's got a work ethic and an intelligence and a personality that's suited to play the position.
All that happened to us.
And I think it's happening more and more as the outside world has dove more in on Cam, because he wasn't familiar, right? He's all the way up at Washington State, played okay. The record was okay. It's not like they were, kicking everybody's butt.
He had entered the East-West Shrine game until Miami swooped in and kind of convinced him to go to Miami.
Yeah, and I think that was the best thing he could have ever done is take one more year of playing quarterback, because I think what you see is the flashes at Washington State, and then you saw it become much more consistent at Miami. Yeah. And I think that's what everyone's starting to see, is that he's really grown over the last year.
A lot of the stuff that we've talked about on this show, the growth, one more, having that one more additional year playing quarterback and all that kind of stuff. So I think that what you saw isn't the ceiling for Cam Ward per se in Miami, but that is a pretty good floor to start off with. And that's something that the Tennessee Titans are in charge of trying to get at the next level, is that next transition.
Well, all I can say is we shall see it. I'm sure hoping if they go that route, we see it sooner than later so we can get all pumped up and excited. Just imagine this. He goes out there and does some Will S type things in the first 5 games of the season. Let's say a couple of those games. Because I sure think he's going to try them, because he's gotten away with them. And he's done well with it. So you got to assume that that's what he's going to try to do. And then it doesn't go right. What then? And I'm asking that to the head coach. Like, what then? And then from a fan perspective, do you then throw him out the window like you did Will Levis? Or you're going to give him second and third chances, because guess what? He was the number 1 pick.
The promise of a better tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There you have it. So just beware that he has to go through growing pains. That's just the nature of the position once you arrive in the National Football League, being a high-profile pick. That's it.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because we heard from Daryl Colbert, I think I got that right, the quarterback coach of Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders on Ramon, Kayla, and Will last Friday, and it was really great.
It was awesome.
There you go to 1045's Zone YouTube page if you've missed it, or go listen to one of the podcasts wherever you get your podcasts from Ramon, Kayla, and Will. And he talked about how when he got a hold of Cam Ward, he said, oh, man, there's a lot of things I got to fix with Cam Ward. And then he started watching the tape. He's like, no, I just need to make those things better. Now, the NFL's sometimes a tad bit different when it comes to that, right?
That's for sure.
And we've seen lots of instances talking about Anthony Richardson over at the Indianapolis Colts, but Callahan did talk about with This Is Football with Kevin Clark, a great podcast if you guys aren't listening to that as well. But Brian Callahan talks about building the offense around a young quarterback and maybe how that's changed even from his time with Joe Burrow.
Yeah, our goal, even I've probably said it before at some point, maybe even to you, is our goal is to make year 1 in the NFL feel like year 3 at LSU.
Yeah.
And so
you said in print, though, it's a dying medium. Now we can do it on podcasts.
Yeah, there we go. But I think that's what the difference was, is that we took a lot of feedback on what he did well at LSU. And tried to incorporate as much of that as possible. Now, we have a lot of the same things, and so it's more, do you like this concept? Yes, I do. Okay, well, let's just do a lot of that.
Yeah.
And that allows you to get off the ground a bit. I think Washington did a great job of that as well.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah, so I think he brings up the Washington stuff because they kind of talked about, well, you see Jaden Daniels completing like 80% of his passes going down the seam against SEC defenses, so quick seams and all that kind of stuff. We're going to incorporate that in the NFL, and they incorporated that in the NFL, and it worked out. Mm-hmm. So, it's looking at, when I think about Brian Callahan and what his main, I guess, directive should be, is that, hey, we're going to bring in Cam Ward. Here's the things that he does well. Here's the thing that he doesn't do well. We're going to accentuate the things that he does well. And that's the sign of a good coach. We'll know whether Brian Callahan is a good head coach by how this system runs with Cam Ward. Now, what I mean by that is, are they doing things that he did in college and applying that into the NFL? Now, if they are doing those things and he's still not performing well, that may be a Cam Ward issue.
Well, what was the offense called there? Because
a power spread offense down in Miami is what they ran. A power spread because they had Damian Martinez back there. A lot of people forget, and we've talked about this. Shedeur Sanders had no run game. Cam Ward had a 1,000-yard rusher, a day 2 pick at running back, Damian Martinez, and that's very important. Now the Tennessee Titans, they have Tony Pollard. They have Tajay Spears. They'll likely draft a running back in this draft. So just brace yourselves, guys. They're likely going to draft a running back in this draft.
I would say, please don't do that. Now, the reason why I say that, this is a big running back draft class. Not unless you want an elite one.
I think
you can
sixth
get
round.
You can get one undrafted. I guarantee it. There are some elite. I would say rotational, and when I say rotational with the starter, it could be good players in the NFL. Now, that could be late round too, as well. But I sure hope with all the pieces and holes they have right now.
If they draft one in the second round or fourth or fifth, then you may see me lose my mind a little bit. Unless it's some weird player dropping.
It better be an elite player. Yeah, no question.
Yeah, but I look at it and I go, okay, so power spread offense. You don't have the pass catching weapons to maybe run a spread offense successfully in the NFL, but they run a lot of 11 personnel. They run a lot of multi pass catching situations and all the pass catcher situations, all that kind of stuff. But they have the run game, so they can applying a power spread to the Brian Callahan offense we saw last year should be an easy transition. So then it becomes, are you going to allow Cam Ward to be the guy that can go out of structure, play hero ball? Are you willing to live with that? And hopefully they are, because that is part of the nature. If you start getting in Cam Ward's head with his mechanics, his feet, his arm angles, and all that stuff, much like what Colbert said, his quarterback coach, you shouldn't want to do that. Because when you start doing that, you get in their heads. We saw it with Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, when I hear that, I think I hear when you're trying to get in your head, I don't think you're trying to change their mechanics. I think you're trying to get in their head, telling them what they can and can't do. And then that brings on the hesitation. That's what they did to Will Levis. And then he thought, okay, I don't want to make a mistake. I'll just hold on to the ball and I'll find the next open guy. And then he was just taking sacks. That's the same thing that happened with VY. They tried to make them something that they weren't, instead of just going all in on who they are and just say, hey, man, if you can't get past the first read, dump it down to your safety valve. That's it. 1-2, boom. 1-2, boom. And guess what? When I saw Brandon Allen, when I watched tape of him today, that's what I saw. Because he couldn't go through his progression read. When number one guy wasn't open, he dumped it down to the running back every time.
Yeah.
Or the shorter route, he knew where to go. Other than that, it looked boring. I mean, it was boring.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, I see why he's kind of more so a 3. It can get you through a tough time.
Right.
But at the same time, that's not the guy you want out there.
Like you said, boring.
Yeah.
Hey, guess what? I tell you what's not boring. That's Nashville Sounds Baseball. It's Winning Wednesday with 104.5 The Zone and Nashville Sounds. Be caller number 5 now to win 2 tickets to see the Sounds host the Memphis Redbirds next Wednesday, April 9th at First Horizon Park. The Sounds will have a clear tote giveaway for the first 1,000 fans as well. 615-737-1045. Be caller number 5 now. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone.
There are a lot of diagnoses out there, and there's a pill for everything. But not all diagnoses are accurate, and not all pills are good for you. So, hey, it's Blaine Bishop, and when you get a diagnosis for European Auto Repair, get a second opinion before you make a major decision. And Eurofix is the home for second opinions. So before you spend hundreds or even thousands of dollars on European vehicle repair for a diagnosis, go to Eurofix. It can not only save your vehicle's life, but could actually save you from a lot of stress that can ruin your weekend and save you some money. And life's too short to get stressed out and angry. So be happy and go to Eurofix. And at Eurofix, you get a free 15-minute no-wrench inspection with an estimate at every visit, and not high-pressure sales tactics. They have a 3-year nationwide warranty, as well as you get a free loaner car with every repair appointment. And in Eurofix, you never pay dealer pricing. And it's been family-owned for 26 years. Located in Franklin, Hundred Oaks, Murfreesboro, Belmead, and now Mount Juliet. And all you have to do is just give them a call at 844-EUROFIX. That's right, 844-EUROFIX, or you can visit them online at myEurofix.com. That's myEurofix.com. Always tell them, Blade,
Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 105 The Zone, powered by All Four Seasons Garage Doors, 615-737-1045. We're trying to wrap up everything from the owners' meeting that ended yesterday, which, by the way, you need to update your update on that. You said that they're still ongoing and is not ongoing.
They're still hanging out down there.
They're just all hanging out. We know Buck's just hanging out down there right now. He's at a beach somewhere. Probably, do you think he's listening to the show?
No.
All right.
Absolutely not.
Okay, so Callahan, like I said, was on This Is Football with Kevin Clark, doing a little sit-down chat on a park bench down there at the Breakers Hotel down in West Palm Beach. And here's what he had to say about quarterback development and how not all situations are equul.
I mean, that's how I see it, is that most of these guys are picked high to play. And I think the instances of, the Mahomes and the Rodgers, those were very different team setups then, too. Kansas City had a good football team. They did. With Alex Smith. And so it wasn't as imperative that the pick hit right away. Right. Which I don't think that's majority of cases. Usually you're counting on that guy to play. And so there is a lack of developmental time because these guys do get thrown in so fast and they have to perform quickly. Yeah. The other part of it is, if you want to talk, another discussion for another day, is offensive line development, right? Maybe even harder at this point. But that's where these guys got to come in and they got to play. And so from a development perspective, I think what you saw, even what we did with Joe Burrow, I think what you saw Cliff do with Jaden Daniels is you find as many things that you can find to where they can have success early and allow them to play fast and play confident, and you sort of fill it in as you go, and you stack those lessons and you stack those things that maybe they weren't as good at that you have to develop. You kind of introduce them slowly as you let them get off the ground.
Yeah, I mean, again, quarterback development isn't linear. It's something that we've talked about numerous times, and the situation with Cam Ward, I mean, we've talked about the backup situation here at Tennessee, Blaine, and you said you've gone back and watched Brandon Allen, and I'm going back to, can he provide any kind of competition for Cam Ward? I mean, because that's what we talked about.
No,
there's no pushing.
No.
But Cam Ward sounds like right here, if theoretically, if he were to be the Tennessee Titans' #1 overall pick, and we all know he's the first overall pick, you should expect him to play day 1, week 1 of the NFL season. But again, there's no competition behind him to help push him. So you watch Brandon Allen. Did you even waste your time watching Tim Boyle?
I did not.
Yeah, I don't blame you. But you watch Brandon Allen. So where's the competition coming from to at least push the young quarterback? Do you think that there is an extra quarterback? Do they double dip at quarterback in the draft? I mean,
with all the holes they have?
I don't know. I mean, maybe it's an undrafted free agent. Maybe a Seth Hennigan falls an undrafted free agent or something like that. But where's the competition coming from? Because we don't expect Will Levis to be on this roster. Doesn't mean that he's not going to be, but where's the competition coming from?
Well, I like Will Levis on the team, at least as far as athletically and arm talent, to be in training camp and see how much he can increase his trade value. So then at least you have him in training camp. So I do like him for that service. And I think they're going to prop him up and try to, trade him, after, preseason. That way he can increase his value, at least try to get a 5th rounder maybe, something for him. So that's it. There's nobody else on the roster. There's any competition. It is not even close.
So the value of Brandon Allen is just the quote-unquote mentorship or voice in the locker room, right?
Coach in the on-field, off-field, meeting rooms type quarterback. And you do need to support a guy like that. I just like my guy to have a little more warts on the belt there. I mean, playing and starting for, at least a handful of seasons. That's the part. But that doesn't mean it has to be. I think that's where they're kind of missing the boat there.
I do find it odd because everybody's like, well, they don't need to spend money on a backup quarterback, or they don't need to do this and don't need to do that. And I'm thinking, well, they got the money. They got a whole buttload of money sitting right now. Again, you don't think, would you rather pay Tim Boyle and Brandon Allen $2.9 million or one Joe Flacco for $5 million. I mean, Jimmy G went for $4 million, and I tried to tell everybody Jimmy G was going for $4 million, and he picked right back up at the Rams and is happy as a clam back there behind Matt Stafford. And maybe you weren't willing to overpay $5 or $6 million for Jimmy G if you're the Tennessee Titans. But I don't understand why. Like, I'm sorry, if you're not spending that cash or spending that cap space elsewhere, why not take advantage and get a high-end backup for your quarterback? I don't understand this. And I get that we're sitting here screaming about backup quarterbacks in the NFL draft, but I do think backup quarterback is a legit important position in the NFL. We've seen money spent on backup quarterbacks. Even if those quarterbacks never see the field, they're better to have at least in the locker room.
Well, maybe they learned from maybe an experience that they liked Mason Rudolph on film, but then when he came to their system, he, just thought he was okay. They could say they offered him and everything else, but obviously they didn't offer him enough because he didn't get paid a lot to go to the Steelers.
Right.
So it's just really perplexing. Like maybe they wanted someone who knows the system. And it can execute it to the way that they like in worst case scenario. And that's probably about all I could say about Allen. he did, but man, when anything happened, he looked like a poor man's Will Levis because after the first read, he would go through panic mode.
Yeah.
So maybe they're just in a crunch and they don't want to spend that kind of money on a backup quarterback, knowing that they're going to have someone here that's going to be the number one pick. And, there's another philosophy, and that's what I'm going to say, is that they don't want anyone to be a threat. So as far as Flacco, that's going way over the brain. He's got a Super Bowl championship, so he's going to carry weight in the locker room. And then all of a sudden, when things go bad, people are going to be like, hey, man, let's put Flacco out there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. See, so you want someone, that's why I said like 5 years of starting experience or playing a lot.
Like a Drew Lock. I mean, people laughed at you.
Right. I know they did.
But Drew Lock would fit what you're describing.
At least you had somebody who, I don't, so it's really a comfort level, and maybe they felt system was better to get a quarterback that knows system than maybe a guy like that. Yep. And I get it, so I'm not going to be real picky about that. But at the same time, I do want somebody who can push him, though. And granted, you're going to bring in a guy like that. He doesn't need any pushing, but at the same time, you want it to always be in his back of his mind so he stays on his P's and Q's in every facet of the game, that he better be ready and playing his best. And, even with that support. But when he goes out there, like, dang, man, that guy made a good throw. I don't know. That was a tough throw.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Well, 3HL's up next. Happy birthday to the mayor. It's his birthday today. Y'all make sure y'all wish him a happy birthday in the chat when 3HL starts up. This has been Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone. And in the meantime.
And in between time. Peace.
We've got the trucks, all the trucks, all the trims, all the towing, all the bells and whistles, and all at Truck Month Savings. Two Rivers Ford is Ford Truck Central.
Did you know you're overpaying for your health and wellness products?
With over 20 company-owned brands offering its members vitamins, supplements, wellness, and skincare products, you're able to save up to 70% off retail.
Members Nutrition can't change your life, but we can change the way you live.